going to be PXG taking this
Rinascita
first set.
is your second team to qualify.
Secure their spot in the
Looking like
qualifying
it's the
field.
qualification
taking on the
just
Splat
like
World
that.
Series again.
Cricket is looking at qualification.
Hello and welcome to Global Gauntlet Rewound, where we will rewind and take a look at some of the sets that were not on the mainstream. This is for Global Gauntlet 2, and we're going to be taking a look at Mellow versus Rinascita. I'm Sasu here with Cakes. And Cakes, how are you doing today?
I'm feeling really good. I'm great. I'm happy to be on mic, and I'm ready to see some good sets. How are you feeling?
I'm doing mellow good because I'm good and raring to go to see both of these teams face off ultimately. Let's take a look at Mellow Good and their roster. We're looking at Walbo, who's going to be on that back line, most likely on the Snipe Rider. Shuta, who may or may not actually be on a shooter. Grand Roll, famous for being on the Dreadringer, particularly here in zones, and Shito rounding out the roster there. But go ahead and tell us about Rinascita.
Well, on Rinascita, we are seeing Volti with that Carbon, Yeti on a shooter, Yoshel with that backline, maybe we'll see that leader, and we have Phoenix on 52 and or Custom Blaster. Really a comp that'll pack a lot of power.
Yes, especially with Volti and Yoshel. I think that's a lot of kill power to have at your fingertips. And now we're gonna take a look at the maps between the bans and the picks. Of course, this is the first the first pick here, so both teams gonna put through their bans, and the one that ends up being selected will be random. Marlin Airport and Crab Lake Capital off the table, so is Lemuria Hub and Manta Maria. The random choice is going to be Umami Ruins. Tell me your thoughts on that, Cakes.
Well, Umami Ruins is a bit of a choke-heavy map. There's only one way to go into the enemy base, and with the two distinct lanes on both sides of the zone, as it's a split zone map, both teams having a charger, it's going to be very hard to navigate that mid without having the top of the mid to break line of sight and be able to chip and poke out the other members who aren't chargers.
Really good point. Not to mention, of course, Grand Roll, well known for having that Dreadringer. So this being two zones, it's going to be way harder for you to sort of cheese the zone, so to speak. But as predicted, we do have Shuta not on a shooter. Instead, it's going to be the V Mini with the hammer, and Shito on that custom blaster.
And getting into the game here, we have a classic opening from Shita on this blaster, just trying to keep control of this top mid along with Shuta on this mini. Shito goes down, but Shuta finds a trade to even out the score. We're just seeing, we're in neutral right now, just trying to find some space to start making a push in.
Yes, but you have Shito very unfortunately going down to Volti's Zuka there, and I think there's just a lot of pandemonium. Volti moving forward, but making sure not to overextend. That's very difficult to do on a Carbon in particular, and it feels like when the dust settles, ultimately it is Rinascita who has a chokehold on this top mid.
I completely agree. We have Yoshel on this top mid, like you said, just absolutely like a hawk, just making sure that nobody can start to push in. One player jumps out of the dugout, and we do have this hammer from Shuta trying to make something happen. It gets thrown, but nobody gets found. The Zap ties on the side of Rinascita, and now with two down, Mellow is finally making their way in and just cleaning up all these picks in order to get their a good foothold into mid.
Yeah, and they were able to get 3 entire members down there, so I think that ultimately, sorry, a little bit of a switch with those colors there, I believe. Shuta is here moving forward, but immediately gets splatted. Volti is a nightmare on this Carbon, particularly with that Trizuka, because it just seems as though nobody is safe as soon as that's popped. And while Rinascita is backed up a little bit, they're still doing a really good job of making their way in.
Yeah, and Yeti on this sub just trying to find an angle backs up as they get painted out, but Volti now sharking in, finds a pick onto the pen, and that's a wipeout on the side of Mellow Good. Rinascita finally trying to make a push for their base.
Yes, and Yoshel being in this position is deadly. Now, you see a little bit of knockback, I think, from Walbo, who's trying to get everyone to back up so they can ultimately get out of that choke. Grand at that top right, just kind of throwing out bombs, hoping to get something going. But the Reef Slider is ready. You have to imagine that a lot is going to be riding on that, because even though they can't necessarily cheese the zone, they can stall some things out by getting one of those. And Grand getting that pick, it's just Volti who is up. They save themselves a little bit and take that right zone. Honestly, this has just been a really fantastic retake from Mellow Good.
Yeah, Grando finding that expert pick with those flicks onto Volti, and now Volvo's set up in this exact spot we were talking about earlier with Yoshel on this top mid, just being able to control all. Oh my gosh, Volti sneaking behind and finding two to instantly flip the fight into their favor, finds three, and now it's Rinascita with majority control in mid. Mellow Good is going to have to find a way to get back in. Shuta unable to finds one pick and trades out while behind. That is going to be really good and potentially help them get back in.
Volti really single-handedly did that retake. She had everything on her shoulders and got that done. Grand roll, getting a pick, but ultimately being punished in that end lag there. So you have Shuta here just sort of painting around, trying to check. When you have a Carbon on the opposing team, even though they just went down, you should keep everything painted. But Shuta gets sniped down from Yoshel before they're able to even throw that hammer. And once again, honestly, Mellow Good can't even afford to rest on their laurels, because they know that Volti may help in single-handedly taking a retake again, and Rinascita is not to be trifled with.
Exactly. Rinascita looking for this play on the left side of the map. Volti finally getting the top of mid, retreats towards the left side, and Phoenix is trying to stake a claim on that right side and make an angle happen. There's a bunch of scraps going on. One goes down top mid. Granroll finds a pick with the slider, but Volti comes over and shuts it down immediately. And now it's just Volti left. Volti's just behind Mellow Good and trying to find an angle, but the members of Mellow Good are closing in, and Volti really has nowhere to go and goes down. With only 8 ticks left on the zone, Rinascita needs to find a way in right now, but it's just too late. Game 1 goes to Mellow Good.
Yes, what a game indeed. You see that several of the members were trying to buy themselves some time on Rinascita by neutralizing the zone closest to them, but I think that there was just a really good counter, and that Grand Roll was sitting there. I think Shuta was sitting there as well. They made sure to keep that one painted because they knew the other one was safe. And if you take a look at this replay, because there are honestly just so many action-packed sections in this entire game. You have Grand throwing those bombs from before. I think tried to do that Reef Slider, but ultimately you see trying to get that pick there. Just a lot of pandemonium happening. It was very difficult for these teams. And Volti was the last person left here. And I think they kept themselves alive, and they did a really good job retaking here, Mellow Good.
Yeah, I completely agree. There was a lot of focus put onto Volti being the last one, but ultimately that gave Rinascita a lot of time to be able to get their footing back into their main. And here Volti sneaking behind and catching 2, ultimately catching 3 maybe. My bad, sorry, catching 3, and ultimately single-handedly getting their team back into mid for another fight win chance. Really good stuff.
That was amazing. I was like trying to make sure I wasn't yelling and peaking my audio when that happened, because getting that triple, dying on that last one, it seemed like they were in a really difficult position really bought them so much time, and I feel like that kept Rinascita really firmly in the game. So, like I said off the top of this, I think that you were saying there's a lot of power in Yoshel and Volti, and them being able to be set up really puts them in a competitive place up against Mellow Good.
I completely agree. Mellow Good is definitely going to have their work cut out for them if they want to keep those two out and as far away as possible so they can just play their own game. We're striking maps here. Bluefin and Barnacle and Dime are out of the running, and now we just wait for Rinascita's pick being Hammerhead Bridge, a really good map for E-Leader. It's really thin and there's not really many places to go, so Leader has a really good sightline. There's a lot of ledges for Carbon to play off of as well, so both those two power players on Rinascita will have a field day on this map if Mellow Good cannot keep them out.
Yeah, completely agree. I think, but this is the perfect place, the perfect counter pick for Rinascita. They can outrange the other team. It's like a sandbox, really, for Volti. She can go wherever it is she pleases. And I have to wonder if we're going to have Shuta sticking on that mini. No, it's going to be instead a switch over to the Frozen Splattershot Pro, so they have those missiles. I was just thinking Hammer, maybe not so strong here. So accordingly, they switch over. And I think other than that, no particular switches from either teams.
Yeah, unfortunately, Granroll goes down early, which is going to give an opportunity for Rinascita to make a claim to the zone. The zone keeping in neutral, but ultimately it goes to Rinascita. Now they're down ticks on the zone. Shuta finds Yeti and uses this missiles to get Phoenix out, and now it is just Yoshel and Yeti just having to play back and wait for their teammates to respawn. The slider comes out from Granroll. It doesn't find a pick, but Granroll does get to live, which ultimately is in favor of Mellow Good. And two go down from the Frozen Pro from Shuta, and now Rinascita is in a very precarious spot with 50 ticks gone off the zone. They really have to find a way to get back in quickly.
Yeah, this is difficult because honestly, their comp really works well. If they're in control, though, when they're on retake, I think it's way harder. You see Shuta kind of comboing off of their own missiles and getting someone down. Right now, there's only so much time. They're so far away, and I would argue unless Yeti is able to complete this flank single-handedly, and they're not, because Grand does the brutal thing of just reef sliding to make sure no amount of paint that Yeti could get there just gets countered immediately. And that is a 100-0 knockout by Mellow Good on Rinascita's counter pick.
That is just not something you want to see. Unfortunately, just the strength from Mellow Good in being able to just hold those ledges and just be able to get those sliders in and create so much space that they can just go in with was just not enough, as the Leader and the Carbon need to be set up before they can do anything effectively. Really good play from Mellow Good.
Completely agree. I think disallowing Volti from getting set up and Yoshel as well puts them in a really difficult position, you know? And I think that once they were able to push up and they had Rinascita on that back foot, you know, it's hard to retake with Izuka unless you're really painting true. And then if you have your Zuka out, but you're being missiled, you know, what are you kind of supposed to do? So I think that switch over to the Frozen Pro from the mini, really masterful work. And I think that Mellow Good played this counter pick just as well as they could have. And if you're Rinascita, you gotta be sweating knowing that you picked what on paper was your perfect choice, but completely didn't work out for you since you got knocked out with very little contention.
Yeah, but going back to the pick ban phase, Inkblot and Museum getting striked out by Mellow Good, and now it's up to Rinascita to try once more. on their own counter pick to see if they can take a game or will they get swept. Mako Mart is chosen, and again, another map where just having all that range on E-Leader and just having the speed and one-shot potential of that Carbon Roller will be really good. You can stay on those stacks, you can play from spawn and be able to do things with that leader, and because there's such a disparity in high ground and ledges, that Carbon will be able to have a field day as long as they can get set up.
Yeah, I said it was like a playground, like a sandbox hammerhead. I would say Mako way more so. There's so many stacks, and when there is a stack, there is a roller right under it, getting ready to ledge you and give you a hard time. But right off the top, you have Yoshel absolutely sniping Shito straight out of their pants and trying to take that left ledge. Volti immediately jumping after Walbo in this 1v1, and they end up going down because so many of the members of Mellow Good were in that corner just kind of helping. But you see 2 members down from Mellow Good ultimately make that 3. We're getting a bit of a staggering here, and we'll see if they're able to set themselves up. Staggered wipe, Walbo not able to jump out, and now the control goes to Rinascita.
Yeah, we can see here, just like I was talking about in the intro, Yoshel on this stack being able to just beam daggers into their plat, and now Grand Roll unable to use that slider after getting shot by Yoshel. Yoshel just making sure to play as far away as possible so that no funny business can happen while they get set up, and they have absolute control of mid. There's less than 30 ticks left on the zone, and Mellow Good really needs to find a way to get back in, as they're doing right now. Shito goes down without being able to find that Yoshel pick, but was able to back Yoshel up enough so that their teammates could get the zone and put a penalty on Rinascita for now.
Yes, but Grand does get a pick, but I think maybe gets traded out ultimately by Volti. You see Rinascita has made a run all the way down to 14. That is a crazy number, and I think Mellow Good is going to have to work hard to surpass them a little bit there, but Yoshel seems safely to be taking that left. Grand, I think, is just putting some paint down, but it's being contested by Phoenix there on the 52, so they don't feel safe dropping. Yoshel backing up a little bit, trying to get that pick on Shito, but ultimately I think Volti there goes down to Shito on the custom blaster. So little by little, Mellow Good has taken control of mid, and they're moving up accordingly to that left, you see, to put a little bit of pressure on Rinascita so they don't feel comfortable dropping back into mid.
And Rinascita now stuck in their spawn will really have to test their mettle and find a way out. Volti with this Zuka not finding a pick, but finds a way to drop safely. Yoshel just playing this right side, but can't find a pick. Yeti just getting poked out by this pencil, unfortunately going down. 2 down on the side of Mellow Good, and this is the perfect time for Phoenix to find that pick, get the aura, and flip the zone back into favor of Rinascita, stopping the bleeding and keeping the lead firmly in their grasp.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of, we've been highlighting a lot of Volti and Yoshel, but honestly, Phoenix as well as Yeti have been putting a lot of the work. You see that cooler comes out, signature, courtesy of Yeti rather, on the left, making Volti and others feel more comfortable diving the other team. We hear Grand Roll, I think, possibly being canceled out of that Reef Slider that we heard, and Yoshel getting a nasty pick. They get displaced by these missiles, but it's not enough. They're not able to retake them, being Mellow Good. So Rinascita finally getting on the board with this win here, bringing the set to 2-1.
Very good from Rinascita, not getting 3-0'd and having a very I'd say dominant game. They were having a bit of a moment when they got backed up into their spawn, but they were able to quickly and easily find their way out, get the picks that they needed, and still keep the zone in their favor.
Yes, we were talking, you might have seen me go a little and that's because I found out that Yoshel in a game went 12-0.
Oh my gosh.
Crazy
That
work.
is insane.
Rinascita,
Flawless
like I
game.
said before, not to be trifled with. And like you said, they were so dominant in this game. You really showed that they knew what they were talking about, and their retake was really strong, especially because we saw them struggle to retake on a place like Hammerhead. Of course, I think a lot of that has to come down to where they were fighting. Hammerhead retake can be absolutely brutal, especially with this comp, but I think the amount of comfortability that they had with the stage really shined through, and you see exactly why they counterpicked to here. So now it is Rinascita who will be banning Brine Water Springs and Robo Ramen. Robo Ramen particularly interesting because that is common play in the West. So we are going to be taking it to Mahi Mahi per Mellow Good's counterpick.
Yeah, this is I'd say a really good counter pick for Mellow Good. This is also Grandroll's signature counter pick, you know, with that slider just being able to easily capture the zone single-handedly. It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of focus for the members of Rinascita to be able to stop that from happening and be able to keep the game firmly in their grasp.
Yeah, absolutely not shocking in the least bit. If you've ever had the unfortunate experience of going up against a Dreadringer in Mahi, you know exactly why they have picked this. I think when I was on the cast, I predicted that this might actually go the way of Mellow Good, and one of the reasons why is because I knew Grand Roll on that Dreadringer may give them a difficult time on somewhere like a Mahi Mahi. So right off the start, we have an unfortunate pick there on Phoenix, but Yoshel paying them back in kind by making sure that Randroll in particular with that slider goes down and hopefully stays down if they're lucky.
Yeah, and speaking of people staying down, Phoenix finding two and making sure that the members of Mellow Good will have to stay in their base, at least for now. Phoenix all the way in their base, finally getting taken out, but with the cover fire from Volti, keeping the members still firmly in their base. Volti finding two very quickly, and the water level goes down. Grandroll finds two with that slider, and now has control of mid. Rinascita, although they got the water down, will now have to fight their way out of spawn.
Yeah, I'm like, the water level went down, and so did 3 members of Rinascita. That had them completely backed up in their spawn. But interestingly enough, I think Mellow Good really keeping it mellow there and not trying to push up and keep them in their base. They sort of stayed in mid rather than pushing up, and I think they're paying for it. Volti gets a pick on this, on the Zuka, with everybody kind of standing on that top right. And, you know, they have not done what I just pointed out that Mellow Good didn't. They're pushing up. I think Phoenix gets a little bit punished for that, but I think all the while that's allowed their team to tick down the time, and the fact that they have the lead, that they're moving into the 30s, I think it's really paid out for them.
Yeah, and you can see Shita here with this blaster. Didn't finds a pick onto the Zout, but gets traded out in kind. Phoenix also getting traded out yet again, and we're just having a bit of a trade fest going on from both teams. Yoshel looking for a pick to change the game state, but just not being able to find it. I eat my words, finds a pick on Sawolbo on that pen, and Yoshel just commanding the map, this left side of the map. Volti trying to go in with the shadow of the leader, but just not able to find a pick. Phoenix going down to that hammer, and Volti finally getting taken out, and that will be Rinascita's time in mid. It is now time for Mellow Good to have a say in mid.
Yeah, Shuta throwing that hammer, having switched back to the V-Mini, definitely has kind of more power here. Being able to use that rush mode or just kind of use it as a single shot across the map like that is really paying them back. And you see that Mellow Good is closing in on that lead, and they do ultimately take it, giving a little bit of more pressure here to Rinascita. That Zuka comes out. I was going to say a rare instance where Volti does not get to the pick, but Volti said, whoa, I've got 1 shot left. I can't mess up my record there, and does ultimately get it. But Yoshel going down. There's 2 members down on Rinascita, make that 3. Phoenix is the last person down, and this is a lot of pressure because time is ticking down, and with everybody ultimately gone on the last team, Mellow Good really holds out at the end there and takes the entire set in a 3-1.
Yeah, beautiful work from Mellow Good there with expert special usage and just generally being in the right space at the right time, corralling all the members of Rinascita into one corner just so that they could bully them further and take the game from their grasp.
Yeah, you can see just like it felt like Rinascita had such expertise with a Mako Mart. That is what we saw in Mahi Mahi. This is why that is the signature counter pick for a Grand Roll. They really, they just went through it with such ease, and like you said, that special usage really helped them out. We saw Shita get that pick on the hammer, and all of those reef sliders really did super well. But yeah, that is going to be a 3-1 and a really good showing from Rinascita.
Yeah, and with that is the end of the set, so that is the end of this as well. Thank you for tuning in to Global Gauntlet Rewound, and we'll see you later.
You're so far off, oh, it's like you can't see ahead. These feelings you've caught don't make sense. Your plan's gonna flop. You keep raising doubts with